Hello, my name is Oscar Flechas. I'm here to present a project here in Edmonton, T5M, that is multifamily. Probably it's going to be the first multifamily passive house in Alberta. So it's very exciting that we can have it here. So a little bit about myself. My name is Oscar Flechas, and all those acronyms are right there. It means really that I'm an architect registered in Alberta and in BC. I'm a certified passive house designer. I did my first passive house renovation back in 2010 when I was kind of used to practice in Vancouver. Now I'm in Calgary. And I have a few projects in the commercial side that apply the standard. In fact, one of the first institutional passive house buildings in Alberta and the first passive house plus building in North America. We did it with the Scott Builders. Some of the guys are here as well. And I'm, in my free time, I used to be the president of Passive House Alberta. I have to say that now I'm the past president because I quit kind of last month. So a little bit of the overview of what we're going to see. I only have 20 minutes, so hopefully these guys don't cut me right way through. If they cut me, we talk about that later. So missing middle, what is missing middle? The passive house and multifamily, and a little bit of my rant with closing remarks of what it is that is happening. So the missing middle, really. This is from the pages of Edmonton, and they even had a competition about seeing new types of development. And what we see is, what is that? It's just kind of what is in that between the big towers and the single family house. What they have as a description typically is like row housing, courtyard housing, and don't ask me why. They have tiny home communities. But it comes in a minute. Stacked row housing, walk-up apartment, low-rise, mid-rise, and triplex fourplexes. The problem here is, for some of you that are familiar, some of you, if you're not familiar with passive house, is that in Alberta there's a line where this thing, it gets a little bit easier to make it and a little bit harder. And it's just the area volume ratio that you have right here. And if you see what that line is like, we almost kind of kill that part of the equation. So you need to be kind of very creative to make it happen. I can spend 3 hours here telling you about all the zoning in Edmonton. I'm just going to show you one because it's probably the one that is more representative of what we were doing here for this project. RF5, if you see when I was mentioning what the hell these tiny houses are doing on the description of middle, is because you see these clusters. They kind of have this property, but they have how many? 6 buildings? Right, 7 buildings right there. That's what the descriptions of middle housing, the missing middle will be here. And of course, they do a bunch of things, just trying to simplify your life. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but it's like less amenity areas or something like that. That it helps, but that's not the end that we want to find right here. So in order to explain how we try to incorporate this in the project to make it passive, we're going to see T5M. All of the people here from Edmonton? Okay, Curtis, you're not here, but everyone else here. So this map probably means like nothing to you, but it's North Glenora, you know probably where it is. This is the building, one of the renderings of what is going to be there. But this is the floor plan of what we're just proposing. If you see, it's a little bit more compact building with a courtyard concept and kind of different type of units. 16 units, 8 units on each building in a kind of large corner lot. That's what it is. So you see it is two separate buildings that follow, hard to read, but if you saw for RF5, the heights is what we're trying to follow with this building. So it's a little bit taller at the front and a little bit lower at the back, just following kind of the same principles or the same rationale from the zoning perspective. That's beautiful. Now the problem, how the hell you get that approved? Because it's not on the paper. But the important thing here is that you still have a criteria to go through and believe on that. So one thing I believe, and from the client perspective, is liability. That was important. Second thing is like energy and gas, greenhouse gases efficiency, and the climate resiliency and operations. I have to say, by the way, that this project is the owner owns this building and it's going to be a rental, and that gives you a little bit of a different perspective of why you would go with passive compared to at a market. So livability, what it was important, and the client came to me like, and that's why when I show you the courtyard, it's like we need a little bit of social interaction right here. So the shape of the building is part of that. They needed, then we have the two things. It's like we need windows, but we also need to have what we need to make it passive. Improve solar access, things like that. More important, if you want to go technically for a rezoning, because that's the only way that you can get this type of projects, is you need to have some urban fit. And finally, it was important just to have kind of that a mixed use unit, so even to have some accessible units in the project. So if you see, this is with the project, and when we talk about liability and about probably on the design and the stages, that was the concept, try to have this courtyard where people kind of congregate and all that. If it happens, it will be great, but at least you need to propose many of those things. You need to go also through the process of convincing your neighbors, as I said, that this thing is going to fit. So we had to do probably a bunch of solar studies to tell the neighbors to the north. It's not going to affect all those. We put it, I believe, in many different typologies, but this is kind of the skinnies. If we will have developed this site for skinnies, what will have been the impact to the neighbor? Moving on, so energy and green gases. Important, that was also a mandate. We want to be a passive house building. We could have said, no, we want to be an almost passive, net zero, a ready something. But the plan was, let's do it as a passive. Then it was like, but at the same time, we need to have a very efficient form to make it happen. We need to study envelope and mechanical systems that could work, and also see, and that's what I had in a question mark. It was important to have that embodied carbon. It kind of got lost from the process a little bit, but it was always kind of on the back of our heads. Passive buildings kind of probably is a little bit on the FIOS type of way. Probably a little bit more on the Passive House Institute type of way. I really don't care. And this project is going to go with the US certification system. It's going to be that for particular reasons, but in general, we just had many energy efficiency models at the beginning, trying to see where we were going to go. And we were a little bit lost, I have to say, because it's like, what is that thing that works with the envelope and mechanical systems and all that? We were lucky to have SSRIA came with some money to do a little bit of the research. And I'm not going to show everything, and probably you're not going to see anything of what is in there. But what I'm going to tell you is like, and I need to look here because it's just probably 10, 11 envelopes and 5-6 different mechanical systems in all those variations to see what was kind of the perfect solution for this thing. Green meaning it's okay, the yellow was like and the red is no way. We're not gonna go that way. All of that informed a decision of which way we were gonna go. So finally, there was the component of climate resiliency and operation. There was still a net zero goal, even though we were doing a passive, the goal was still to be net zero. The second thing is that because it's a rental, it needs to be durable. There's this component of climate resiliency, so it needs to function still passively, and a low operational cost. The same. It's a high quality rental building for individuals and family, and they need just kind of have that type of, that's what the owner is technically kind of doing it. It's gonna be, I'm not gonna say, but probably almost we're just still kind of the final touches, and hopefully if we can put all that solar on those roofs, we just make it. It's still a little bit of fine tuning, but hopefully it gets there. And it was the same. It's climate resilience and operations. If you see that same graphic was projected on time. What happens when we have to maintain the equipment? What happened in a year? What happens in 5 years? What happened? We even projected, I believe, to 25 years. Because sometimes the system that you see today is not going to work down the road. Or it's going to be really costly to replace or repair down the road. So that's still something important. This is kind of the happy and the sad part of the whole story. I made a bunch of models for different sites also as part of in the grant with the SSRI of what happens if we do certain type of buildings. This is a building that can be done, I believe is an RF3. Is with the setbacks and all that, the way it is not as efficient, as energy efficient. You still need to find a site that is probably south-facing, all that type of thing. But the benefit of that building is that gets approved very easily. So now the story. This is a building done like that, not passive. The beautiful part of this thing and the sad story around here is that we started the same day, this building with the same builder, a building non-passive and the building that it was going to be passive. We finished this building and did we receive almost the same. So we finished one building and we were only finishing rezoning on the other. So it's when you just start thinking, why I'm going to do this type of buildings if it's going to take me way too long to get there? Is the money, the financing, is all those things that you need to take into account. That's something that probably city policy wants to do those changes. But the book says that you need to go through a process, council needs to make that decision, I don't know how many readings or something like that, and back and forth with the neighbors and all that. We were lucky that the project kind of got, just moving on an different project, but we were lucky with this project that the support from the city staff was like all in. Even when it went for final read, everyone was like, it's fine. People went against and all that, but in reality, the scale and all that, it was not brutal, let's call it. So that's why most people just say, let's do it. So that's one part of the story. It takes time, and a lot of that time is just getting on the approval process. But then I have another project, for example, that I put a lot of effort. This is a project that I have in Calgary. 4 units, also multifamily. I was going to claim also that one as the first multifamily in Calgary. And this one, I had to go through a similar process. I don't think that you will see any of this here in Edmonton because I have car garages, excuse me, 4 car garages coming from the street. And that also helped me just to have a more elongated facade to the south face, so the building will be a little bit cheaper to make and achieve the passive house. You can, it's hard for me to tell you how many hours was put into this project and all that. It's a market project, so it was canceled. Why? Because it took way too long for the same reason, the process. One guy came, saw the development, and said, you know what? I will buy that piece of property with the development permit. I will put something that is not passive, but I will do it. For the owner, it's like, you know what? I'm gonna get the money right away. Why should I put all that extra effort to make it if it's not gonna work? So that's kind of the other side of the story. When you're on market, there's some different forces that will make it. If you ask me just to get it, it's not the end of the world. And there's many possibilities. And there's probably the message right here. We keep modeling things in different sites right here. Technically making it bigger is a little bit the way to go. It's technically less effort. You still spend the same amount of time doing the rezoning, but at the same time you can have labor forces just supervising the sites and all that, because if it's too small, you probably don't have the same amount of people or the same resources that you can have when the building is a little bit bigger. And I usually close my presentation with these 2 screenshots as well, because we cannot really be discouraged for something like this. I think that we're on the positive for Dave that is here and the owner that is here. They're building on this. I'm glad that that's a good opportunity for anyone who wants to chat with them later, because this is a total experience. It's kind of those that you say, I'm learning, I still don't know, we're on the process that it's probably hard to say, we will do it again, and more when you're just writing checks for this thing, but at the same time, it's so rewarding to know that you're doing this type of thing. Why? Because the energy efficiency really is the key to the future of energy supply. I bet that I don't have to convince anyone here in this room, but there's many people out there that still struggle with that concept. And finally, this is from the Pembina Institute report on Passive House many years ago, just I believe it was on 2016 or something like that, 5 years ago, 5, 6 years. And is that each building that is allowed to be constructed at suboptimal efficiency is a 50 plus liability in a world that needs to be decarbonized, fully decarbonized within 18 years, I believe now. They're moving the target, it's not 30. So we're kind of late, and we need to act right now. And anyone that knows anyone at City Hall or something like that, or a friend that wants to buy something like this is an opportunity to say we need to start acting to make it happen. Okay, final here. I think that there's no question. My contact info is right there if you want to ask. But I believe the most important people to ask questions. And sorry, I just tend to recycle my presentations as well. And this is the last page that I always use for Passive House Alberta. But the groups of Passive House Alberta, Passive Buildings Canada, the owner, the person that is sitting next to you, knows something that you always gonna need. And that's so important in this small community. When I started, I thought that I was crazy. But then I knew that there was other people as crazy as I was. And that's the important thing just to know. We need rehabilitation at some point, yes, for sure. But then you can contact anyone and be sure that we come to these type of events. So I think that that's for me. Hopefully I'm under the 20. And thank you very much.